You've heard people talk about, in order to kill a snake, you have to cut its head off. That's what this team has done, said FBI Special Agent in Charge Stephen L. Morris. Agent Morris was referring to a November 9th, 2012 unsealed indictment that wrapped up 34 alleged Aryan Brotherhood of Texas gang members, including multiple generals, captains, and bosses. What this indictment did was shown the lengths that the gang was willing to go to protect its vicious reputation, prove that it's not to be messed with, and shown that it's willing to commit murder and other extreme acts of violence to maintain control over not just the prison system, but the streets as well.
We stuck with our own inside. And of course, anything you have inside any gang, you're going to get out. You know, when you get out, a couple of you get together and you start doing this and that, and it grew. It was all about business. Drugs, prostitution, sold a lot of drugs. A lot of females, up and down 35. If you ran up 35, pulled in one of the motels, you bought anything extracurricular, money went in my pocket.
It wasn't uncommon to have really about $70,000 a week in cash.
They had a constitution which essentially laid out everything that this particular group does in terms of the rank structure, in terms of what their beliefs are, in terms of everything from what happens when someone is disciplined to what doesn't happen when someone is disciplined. They have different levels of discipline.
Back in the day, we would get tattoos of our shield. If you didn't held up, you didn't held up. When you got an X back then, I'd come peel your patch off of you. So if you've got it tattooed on you, you can imagine I'm going to skin a chunk of your side.
Robberies, pounds, methamphetamine going up and down I-20, credit card fraud. It's all murders. Obviously, it's kidnapping. They talk about kidnapping between each other like it's nothing. Like having somebody in the closet is nothing to them. Murder, if it's ordered, it's nothing to these guys. They're so loyal. And I think that's the scariest part, is how loyal they are, and you don't cross them.
Get in, Georgia.
Violence to each other, mostly a lot to each other. They would keep picking each other off one by one.
Clearly, they're a very violent group, and in order to instill discipline within the organization, they need to ensure that they can go out and commit violence against each other.
Look at me.
Oh, yes, sir.
I want to tell you something.
Oh, yes, sir.
You hear me?
Yes, sir.
If you ever say Aryan Brotherhood of Texas or Colorado, we'll kill you.
So they use that to kind of set an example for others that are thinking about perhaps swaying or straying from their blind faith commitment to the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. A blind faith commitment is a document that a prospect signs stating, in fact, that he is going to be a member of the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, and it's a commitment that you take for life. There was a homicide in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Breonna Taylor in 2006.
She was tortured, and ultimately she was dismembered and put in a plastic bathtub filled with Quikrete and dumped in Lake Ray Hubbard.
There was no way. Things got so carried away, there was no way she could. Once things got out of hand, it was the only way it could end.
When we all were briefed on this particular homicide from the folks from Dallas, we all knew that something had to be done about the ABT after hearing what happened to Breonna Taylor. In the summer of 2008, I was targeting an armed career criminal who we believed was providing silencers and firearms to the Bandito outlaw motorcycle gang. In the course of executing a search warrant at this individual's residence, we obtained a number of different firearms, and in doing so, he was looking at a mandatory prison sentence of 15 years or more. It wasn't long before he decided he wanted to cooperate with us, and in doing so, he said that not only did he know some leaders within the Bandito outlaw motorcycle gang, but he also knew the general of the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. One of the things that the ABT would typically do every month is they would hold what they call church meetings. And in these church meetings, what would occur is they would discuss their criminal activity. They would collect dues for the organization, and they would discuss gang business.
A big part of this case was built on the development and cultivation of confidential informants.
Someone would become a CI for multiple reasons. Maybe they're pending charges, for one. And the other reason is some do it for financial reasons. So a confidential informant, if he's actually in these church meetings, could do a number of different things. One, he could record what was happening. And secondly, he can come back. If he wasn't recording, he could tell us exactly what was being said by the leaders within the organization.
Kicked in my hotel room door. They charged me with identity theft, prostitution. I mean, the list could have went on and on and on. And he wouldn't about telling me that's exactly what they were going to do. He says, look, I need you to talk to these people. And it was the FBI. And I was like, oh, that's when it got real.
So you always want to make sure that your CI's identity is never disclosed, or that the ABT, in this particular case, doesn't know who your CIs are.
If I was a snitch, that he would torture me himself. He would kill me himself, and that he would spend hours torturing me first.
The ABT confidential informants, for example, a lot of them are hooked on methamphetamine. And you can't really be a confidential informant if you're using narcotics.
If I wasn't using and showing that I was doing drugs, they wouldn't have trusted me.
They're making their approach.
We went after all the generals, and there were 5 generals within the ABT.
Just went through the back fence.
We also indicted a number of majors and captains and essentially all leaders within this organization.
It was the first time in law enforcement history that the RICO had been used to take down the entire leadership of a prison gang that had a nationwide presence.
We had 73 indictments. Of those 73 indictments, 100% were convicted.
I believe that their command and control capabilities have been severely diminished. They'll continue to do what they do, and obviously we'll continue to do what we do.
It's non-existent on the streets. I mean, you have a few that have tried to step up and step into, but there's nothing. I mean, the head's cut off.
She had a green light on me, and she would just find me and kill me. Pretty much at all costs. No matter where, I will be in fear my whole life.
He told me they'll be coming for me. And I told him straight up that when they do, just like the last time they did, that when you send somebody slick, you better send somebody this time.
Call themselves the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, the ABT, considered one of the most dangerous gangs in the state with roots inside the walls of the Texas prison system.
I think the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas today is arguably the most violent white supremacist prison gang out there.
The ABT modeled itself after a California-based prison gang called the Aryan Brotherhood, who were the subject of this National Geographic documentary.
While most gangs seek safety in numbers, the Aryan Brotherhood remains an exclusive crew. Only the most cunning and ruthless convicts may enter the brand's privileged ranks.
Inmates in Texas asked the Aryan Brotherhood for permission to start a Texas chapter. But the Southern Poverty Law Center says they were denied membership. We don't know why, but it didn't seem to matter. Authorities say the ABT followed the California model.
It is said to be one of the gangs that live by the blood in, blood out code, meaning that you can only get into ABT by carrying out some kind of attack. And similarly, or so it's said, you can only leave in a body bag.
And like the larger Aryan Brotherhood movement, authorities say the ABT's main purpose turned from protecting whites in prison to criminal activities like drugs, extortion, and murder. And its reach began to extend outside the prison walls as more members served out their sentences. ABT members on parole are required not only to remain loyal to the gang, but also to recruit new members.
Brutal beatings, firebombings, drug trafficking, and murder are all part of ABT's alleged standard operating procedures.
Last November, 34 alleged members of the ABT were indicted on federal racketeering charges. More than half of the alleged gang members were operating outside of prison.
The Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, as one can well imagine from the name, absolutely has a white supremacist ideology. But the bottom line is that at the end of the day, these organizations are really fundamentally criminal enterprises. That means, above all, their interest is in green, in money. Skin color comes long after that.
Prosecutors say there are more than 2,000 ABT members in Texas, 2,000 members who have pledged to unconditionally follow the orders of their gang leaders, orders that authorities say include violence and murder.
Good afternoon. We'll wait till everybody assembles. Okay.
Move in as tight as you can.
The Aryan Brotherhood of Texas divided their territory into 5 regions, run very systematically in almost a military-type structure. As I talked about, there were generals and majors, sergeants at arms, and they went through, and you can see on the chart we have here today some of that structure. And I think what's important about this case is that all 5 active generals of each of the regions, one for each of the regions, have been prosecuted, convicted, and will spend long sentences in federal prison. The majors have been taken out. The former founding member has been found guilty. An acting general taking over for one of the generals who was already incarcerated has been arrested and convicted. So this really is the decapitation of this gang. Whether it will continue in some form, as U.S. Attorney Magidson said, we shall see. But what we have seen is a dramatic reduction in ABT-related crimes in this region. Well, as I said in my earlier remarks, the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas began in prison, but
gang violence in our communities affects us all. These 36 were the worst of the worst, from burglaries, robberies, and narcotics trafficking to cold-blooded murder. These are just a few of the violent acts these gang members and their associates have inflicted upon our communities.
En las penitencias federales, a uno de los lugares más profundos.
Their presence has been seen here. We have contended with them. We have supported investigations in that regard, and we'll continue to do so. But I think this announcement is a significant one to those who are contemplating their continued membership. Hang it up, or we'll catch you.
Damn. Oh, that fat ass cop jump on top of him and start hitting him. God. Sorry, I shouldn't be giving commentary. Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Greenlit Gang TV. Much love, much appreciation. Thank you guys for checking out today's channel. I'm really excited to bring this one to you guys. I did a really in-depth, well, what I would consider in-depth, a story on the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas and the massive criminal indictment that got brought down around 2012. Everyone involved in the case, you know, like we talk about, these take years to years of investigation. So in this particular investigation, I think it was 3 years. Of course, that's multi-agencies, local, state, Fed officials. But it really brought a lot of its leaders, its generals, and we're going to cover that, the power structure, to its knees. Obviously, they're still around. They're obviously a force to be reckoned with. So we're going to do just a little background on it, then we're going to jump into it here. We're going to be talking about some of the key individuals in the indictment. So again, this indictment came down actually around this time, 12 years ago, in November of 2012. But according to the superseding indictment that came out November 9th, 2012, the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas was established in the early 1980s within the Texas prison system. The gang modeled itself after the original Aryan Brotherhood and used many of the precepts and writings of the Aryan Brotherhood, a California-based prison gang that was formed in the California prison system during the 1960s. According to court documents, previously, the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas was primarily concerned with the protection of white inmates and white supremacy separatism. Over time, the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas is alleged to have expanded its criminal enterprise to include illegal activities for profits. Court documents allege that the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas enforced its rules and promoted discipline amongst its members, prospects, and associates through murder, attempted murder, conspiracy to murder, arson, assault, robbery, and threats against those who violate the rules or pose a threat to the enterprise. And something to remember with a lot of these gangs, if they can't get to you, they're going to go after your family. I've made this comment in other videos. Some of these gangs, like the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, the Mexican Mafia, Nuestra Familia, the original Aryan Brotherhood, they'll kill your goldfish. To make a point, they will kill your goldfish. Often kind of like a Mexican cartel. They will, however they can harm you. If they can't get to you in the prison system, there's some stories out there that really highlight that as a fact, and I encourage any of you to check them out. So, murder, arson, assault, robbery, those who violate the rules or pose a threat to the enterprise. Members are oftentimes associates were required to follow the orders of higher-ranking members, often referred to as, quote, direct orders. Because a lot of you guys remember, a lot of times they follow basically like a military structure, like a paramilitary structure. So many of these gangs, that's what they follow it after. So like a direct order, when you hear that, you'll hear that like within military, right? Have you ever watched a military movie? That's a direct order officer, something like that. The Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, now this is important to remember, okay? This is why I wanted to do this, because we're going to get into the case here. The Aryan Brotherhood of Texas is run by 5 generals, collectively known as, quote, the steering committee, or, quote, the wheel. Each general is given control over a region of Texas, each region having a number of prisons within the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, as well as all of the major counties that comprise that region. Each general has 2 majors, one inside major, one outside major. The inside major, kind of self-explanatory, who is in prison and therefore knows the intricacies of relationships between the gangs and the units, gangs on his units, which makes him better suited to make decisions for those units as a whole, oversees family businesses on the units in his region, oversees every little detail. And I mean, don't get me wrong, every general is going to be a little different as far as how they govern. You're going to have people that maybe they delegate more. You're going to have micromanagers. Again, it's just like they run it like a paramilitary. They run it like a normal business. I don't know where you guys work, but if you work for a corporation, like let's just say you work for a McDonald's franchise, all right? And you've got a store manager, okay? Well, maybe that store manager, very strict, very hands-on. He's in there a lot. He's micromanaging everything, down to how much salt you're putting on the damn fries. Or that opposed to another store manager, let's say in a different county, who, you know what, man, we don't really ever see Paul. Or if it's a girl, Joanne, she just kind of lets us do our thing. That's kind of how this is. Yes, they have a set of rules and structures that they follow. But, again, every general is different, and every leader is different, and that's just in life. Every boss is different. Every president is different. And then obviously the outside major does the same for the cities in his region. Both majors report to their general, who uses the information to keep his region running smoothly. Each prison unit with members is assigned a unit captain, who is in turn assigning orders and giving direct orders to a lieutenant. The lieutenant is the lowest permanent rank within the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. Though on larger units and in bigger cities, the lieutenant may appoint, quote, sergeants to assist him in the day-to-day affairs of the gang. Again, like I just said, it's different. Where certain regions, certain areas are different. Excuse me. According to the superseding indictment, in order to be considered for membership, a person must be sponsored by another Aryan Brotherhood of Texas member. Once sponsored, a prospective member must serve an unspecified term during which he is referred to as a prospect, while his conduct is observed by by other members of the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. All right, so that gives a little background. All right. Now, this brings us to November 9th, 2012. Okay. Now, again, these guys have been doing things since the 80s. Now, with a lot of these prison gangs and a lot of these violent things that you're seeing, things got really ratcheted up in the 90s and early 2000s. And I want to go back quickly to what it said about, we've talked about this with other prison gangs. I've really talked about it with like the Mexican Mafia, Nuestra Familia. At first, they're primarily concerned with the protection of white inmates and white supremacy separatism. But, and another good example of this is over time, they expanded criminal enterprise and included illegal activities for profit. So what that's saying, read between the lines just a little bit, it means they care more about money. Yes, race matters, but it kind of becomes race matters when it's convenient. But at the end of the day, it's about money, power, respect. We've talked about that so many times with different videos. Money, power, respect. The original Aryan Brotherhood out of California, they are like that. Yes, they have ideologies. Yes, they have certain literature and things that they follow. But at the end of the day, they are seriously much more about money and profits and controlling the streets and controlling the prisons than they are about their white ideology, white supremacist beliefs. Now, there are certain white gangs that aren't like that do really, really want to cover and go over and express their views that as a white race, white people are being, attacked and targeted, and the way of life is seriously being threatened. But with the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, Aryan Brotherhood out of California, greenbacks, baby, bluebacks. That's all that matters. And how are we going to do it? How are we going to get there? We're going to step on, crush anybody that gets in our way. So, November 9th, 2012, 34 alleged members of the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas gang, including 4 of its most senior leaders, have been indicted by a federal grand jury in Houston for allegedly conspiring to participate in a racketeering enterprise. The 17-count, 43-page indictment was returned by a federal grand jury on October 22nd, 2012, and unsealed today in U.S. District Court in the Southern District of Texas. 14 individuals were taken into custody today, and 15 defendants charged in the superseding indictment are already in custody. 5 defendants remained at large. Now those 5 defendants did end up getting found and locked up. Don't last long on the run. Every once in a while you hear about these massive indictments, 30, 40, 50 people, always a couple on the run. Doesn't usually last long, especially, I'll just be honest, for some white people, for some white guys. Today's takedown represents a devastating blow to the leadership of the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. At the time, that was said by Assistant Attorney General Brewer. 4 ABT generals, 13 additional ABT leaders, and numerous other gang members and associates are named in the indictment. As charged, Aryan Brotherhood of Texas uses extreme violence and threats of violence to maintain internal discipline and retaliate against those believed to be cooperating with law enforcement through violence and intimidation. ABT allegedly exerts control over prison population and neighborhoods and instills fear in those who come in contact with its members. Now, right now, the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, it's estimated to be at 4,000 or more. That's a pretty large number. At the time of this article, I think it was around like 3,000 or something like that. But that number has grown over the last 10 to 12 years. In reading this, right, it seemed apparent from the details contained in the indictment that several current or former members of the racist Aryan Brotherhood of Texas gang are talking to investigators. Now, I'm not saying they're racist. That was what was read in this article. And that's one point I want to make on this. With this indictment, many people flipped. And cooperated. And to be honest, I'm sure there's going to be some people in the comments. I always kind of get a little back and forth arguing where, oh, look at those white boys, they flipped. Man, it don't matter the race. All these videos I cover, white, black, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, when you put 40 people in a box. There was another, I refer to this Vlad interview. I've referred to Vlad interviews sometimes, and Boozy. But Little Boozy talked about that. I forget what indictment he was talking about. Oh, it was the Young Thug indictment, the YSL indictment. And he said, you put 40 people, right, in a box, 40 eggs in a box, and you shake it. It's a great way to think about it. When you shake it up, so picture 40 eggs in a box, and you shake it up, some are going to crack, man. Some are going to crack. And that's exactly what happened in this case. And we'll get to one major individual who cracked, and his story is super, super interesting. And that kind of ties into that motorcycle chase I was showing you guys on during those clips that we're playing. So, excuse me, talking with investigators, probably as part of deals to receive lighter prison sentences. The investigation had begun about 3 years ago. So it comes down in 2012. It had begun about 2009. It involved all of serious federal and state law enforcement, ATF, the DEA, the Texas Rangers, the different counties, those guys' local police departments, local sheriff's departments, the FBI, goes like a host of state and county agencies in Texas, including investigators and gang experts employed by the prison system. So hundreds, if not thousands, of law enforcement individuals. The Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force is being investigated by the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force investigated this gang for years. All right. Now, what we've talked about before, when the FBI comes and the feds come, they come hard. And that is why so many of these guys flipped, because it was talking about, you wrap up these 34. I believe 10 of them were facing death penalty cases, all right? But the other ones, 120 months, 180 months, 330 months. It's absurd amounts of time given out. So, now, this is what I did through research. This is really important. This is why I'm glad I read as much as I do, because in the first few articles I read, it talks about these four generals. But really, when you read, it's like more like 6 leaders, 6 very defined leaders. Now, the 6 men identified as generals or leaders of the gang: Charles Lee Jive Roberts, 69 years old; William David Baby Huey Maynard, 44 years old; Terry Ross, Big Terry Ross, 57 years old; Larry Max Slick Bryant, 53 years old; Terry Glenn Littlewood Sillers, 51 years old; and James Francis Skits Samsel, 52 years old. All of these guys have very interesting stories. We're going to talk about them here in just a minute. I really, really dove into those guys' just their kind of individual stories and what I gathered from reading about them. And if you guys kind of follow, and I know it's kind of easy to say, nope, they didn't stay solid. But a lot of these guys, the youngest one in here is Baby Huey Maynard, 44 years old, right? A lot of these guys had been down since the 90s, okay? And were major influences within the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, major leaders, had major voices, were looked up to. But they were getting tired. And you're committing these acts of violence and these serious crimes. That begins to weigh on you as you get older. Now, in the comments below, if there's any of you reading this, or maybe you've done some serious prison time, or you kind of know what I'm talking about, feel free to comment down below. Please, I would love to hear your experience within the prison system. And if it's true that when you get older, you know, not that you're not down, not that you're still not a threat, but you know what I mean? Because it talks about how some of these guys cooperated, or a lot of them did, and they were just tired. It's like they wanted to retire was the word used, all right? So, like we talked about in the intro, the FBI special agent in charge, Stephen Morris, he went on to say, you've heard people talk about in order to kill a snake, you have to cut its head off. That's what we did today. Yada, yada, yada. 34 members get wrapped up, all these... and like we've said, the feds, man, they want to make a splash too. They love headlines. They love attention. So they love going after rappers. It gets them in the news. It highlights them. It makes them look badass, because rappers are oftentimes, they're flexing their money. They're flexing their gang. They're flexing gang signs, their drugs, or whatever they're doing out on the streets. The feds love to come in and just drop a hammer and show that, no. You guys think you're badass. You guys think you're running things. Not even close. We're allowing you to go as long as you are going until we go, you know what, enough of that person. We're going to get them off the street. So, in total, the superseding indictment, 34 members of the ABT, 10 defendants had been charged with offenses that were eligible for the death penalty at the time. The remaining 24 defendants faced a maximum of life in prison. All right? So, in this indictment, we're going to name these 3 individuals because it's important. There were 3 murders committed. Okay, 3 murders committed. The indictment alleges those involved in the racketeering enterprise carried out 3 murders. All 3 of these were in Texas. Of Aaron Wade Otto, that was on November 25th, 2001. Robert Allen Branch on March 6, 2002. And Mark Davis Bird Sr. on March 4th, 2008. Okay, we're going to be talking about some of the individuals charged in this. So one of the leaders that was charged, now, the reason I'm going to start with him is because he's not actually named in the original indictment. James Francis Samsel. And I put all these guys' pictures up so you can see. He had been indicted in Houston for his alleged role as a leader of the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. Okay? He doesn't get charged until 2013. because they had the major indictment. Then there was a second indictment that came down that scooped up more of them, and that's where he gets picked up. The second superseding indictment returned. That was on February 20, 2013, by a federal grand jury in Houston. Charges Samsel, a.k.a. Skits, who, again, he's 50 years old this time, of Midland, Texas, with conspiracy to engage in racketeering activity and possession with intent to deliver methamphetamine. And methamphetamine and the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, methamphetamine and the Aryan Brotherhood of California, and just to be honest, with any of these white gangs, it goes hand in hand, man. It really does. It's like eggnog on Christmas. It's like turkey and Thanksgiving. Methamphetamine and the Aryan Brotherhood, it just, unfortunately, for us white people, it just goes hand in hand. And people assume that when you hear a white person is a drug addict, unfortunately, it's two things: heroin, meth. It's all what it is, right? So, anyway, court documents went on to say Samsel was known to be a Region 3 general of the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. A Texas Department of Criminal Justice PowerPoint presentation also listed Samsel as, quote, a steering committee member for the Brotherhood. Remember the steering committee? We mentioned that when we were talking about the history of it. Now, he ends up pleading out in 2014. Now, 2014 is the year that a lot of this got wrapped up, that a lot of guys pled out, got sentenced, and just they got put away. He pled out, he pleads out, he gets sentenced for 140 months for his role. All right, that was in December of 2014. Now, Terry Ross, a.k.a. Big Terry. Now, talking about guys getting older, wanting to retire. This is what he talks about in the courtroom. This is what he says to the judge, to the court. Quote, I have been around a long time, Blake told the judge. Big Terry Ross Blake, all right? Blake told the judge as he stood before him wearing a gray and white striped jail uniform. And I want you guys to picture this. You know, he's in his late 50s. He gets wrapped up in this massive indictment, okay? He's looking at all this time again. You know, he's been down for years, decades. He's got his respect. He's got his, admiration from his fellow members. But he's almost 60 years old. And I don't care what anybody says, but in that time of life, you start looking back on things. You start looking back on even the biggest, baddest dudes, man. They're still human. You've still got family out there. You might have kids. You might have grandkids at this point. People have passed away. At that age, in your late 50s, your parents, probably or may have passed away. And a lot of times this stuff just puts things in perspective. So he tells the judge, I've been around a long time. Blake, who said he was a truck driver by trade, and kicked off a drug addiction in the 90s. He gets arrested, he gets put in prison. He climbed the ranks of the gang while he was in a Texas prison for drug conviction. A few years ago, he took over a region that includes San Antonio and his native Corpus Christi, Texas. Okay, so he ends up pleading out. And, but I feel like, again, been down since the 90s. He tells the judge, I've been around a long time, man. And he went on to just talk about, I just want a place to chill, relax. It kind of is what it is. But those words, when I hear I've been around a long time, he's not bragging. He's not up there going, man, I've been doing this. I'm the man. No, he's just resigned to his fate. Let's just get this over with so I can go back. Charles Lee Jive Roberts. 68 years old, Charles Lee Jive Roberts. He was involved in a murder, and when it came to murder, it appears Roberts wasn't jiving. Authorities say he admitted he had 6 people killed on behalf of the gang in 2011. Quote, I just want a decent place for my retirement. He continued asking the court to send him to a prison with a medical facility. He went on to say, you give me 20 years, 30 years, life, I don't care. If you need to make an example of somebody, here I am. And that's, again, you go back to what Big Terry said. Well, you got Charles Lee Jive Roberts. I just want a decent place for my retirement. Think about that. Retirement, that's how they look at it. Okay? Others who had ended up pleading out and kind of big dogs, Jamie Lovell, a major in the gang from Houston, and Kelly Ely, a captain from Austin. Lovell admitted to a 2001 Harris County murder in which one of the gang's members was shot in the back of the head for breaking rules, as well as a second murder of an ousted member in 2002. Then you go back to Kelly Ely, 36 years old, whose gang name was Magic, ordered the murder of a recruit, and this is crazy, and told the killers, the ones he hired to do it, to make the hit as messy as possible as a way of intimidating other members from cooperating with police. In one instance, according to documents, Kelly Ely, a.k.a. Magic, ordered members to kill a recruit and make the killing as messy as possible, directing the killers, quote, to return the victim's severed finger as a trophy. Ely ordered the attack as a way of intimidating recruits from cooperating. All right? In another instance, July 28, 2010, 3 members took a blowtorch and burned off the gang's insignia tattooed on another member's arm as punishment for refusing to take an order. So, some of these guys, the older guys, I don't feel bad for them. It's not that. I mean, even here, like Jive Roberts, right? Make an example. I just want a place to retire. But then it's like, oh, wait, he had 6 people killed. You reap what you sow in this life. I really am a firm believer in you get out what you put in. And, as a recovering addict, I was somebody who I did the poor me for a long time. I remember the day, it was like a week before I had to go into jail. And like I said, I've never done any serious prison time. The longest I ever did was 180 days. But I remember about a week before I had to go do my 180 days, I got pulled over driving on a suspended license. They didn't even take me to jail. I had to get picked up by a family member. And I remember I was so mad at God, at the world. And I was I can't catch a break. I'm getting ready to go do 6 months. I got fired from my job two months prior for being all messed up at work. Bunch of different painkillers, bunch of different pharmaceuticals, Xanax, Coke, the gamut. I was on everything. And I remember just blaming everybody. Everybody. I remember laying home at night, just not praying to die, but just saying, if I didn't wake up tomorrow, that I'd be okay with it. And if any of you have ever been through that, you know what I'm talking about. And not saying that this is what these guys pray for, but I think it gets to a point where you've done so much dirt, so much. And my story's right. Like I was just ran out of myself because of my drug addiction. I'd been going hard for over 10 years. They had seriously cost me everything. Other than taking my life, I had lost everything. No job, no money. I wasn't allowed around any family members. It was, other than just at an arm's distance, like I'd get a ride, they would just drop me back off somewhere, And I think about these situations where these people have been in prison for 20, 30 years, all this time. And they, me at the time, I was in my mid-20s. I can't imagine being in my mid-50s or my mid-60s. And you look back on your life, and some of these guys have committed multiple murders or ordered multiple murders to be committed. And what that must do to one's psyche, even though they present a very hardened front and the tattoos and what they're going to say in interviews or in front of their fellow gang members because you can't show weakness. But I'm talking about, really think here, and I'm not trying to get off track, but just really think what those inner thoughts are at night when they lay their heads down. Or you as an individual, if you're listening to me talk, if you're currently using or if you're in recovery, take yourself back to those worst moments as a user, whether you're on the streets, whether you're at home. What I do is I think about the days, and I had a lot of them, where I was dope sick. I think about the days where I literally physically felt like I was dying, and just the mental, how weak I was mentally, not just physically. Of course I was weak physically, but mentally how fragile I was. And I remember going into jail and just realizing that officially I had hit bottom. The only thing left for me was death, that I officially had hit bottom. So I just want to take a minute to remind everybody again, get the help, get clean, get sober, reach out to me on here, talk to people, because it's never too late. It really is never too late. And I read these stories and I read these guys' statements to the court, and it's like they're resigned to the fact that their life is they're never getting out of prison. That's their life. So anyway, that's Ely, all right? He is just having people killed, making it as messy as possible. They're burning off tattoos of people that are in bad standing. So some of these sentences that, got handed out, again, we're just going to talk about it here. All right. Stephen Tobin Mullen, 45 of Dallas, James Eric Sharon of Houston. They were sentenced to respective terms of 156 months and 72 months in federal prison. Okay. Larry Max Bryan, 52 of Houston, that was Slick, and Terry Ross Blake, Big Terry, 56 of Corpus Christi, both high-ranking generals, leaders of the ABT, not generals, I'm sorry, just leaders of the ABT. They were given 300 months, and Terry Ross got 180 months in federal prison. Jamie Grant Lovell, 38 of Houston, Ely, 37 of Houston. Those are the two youngest ones I see. And Ronald Lee Prince, 44 of Dallas, were also sentenced to respective terms of, check this out, Lovell, 390 months. Ely, 270 months. Excuse me. And Ronald Lee Prince, 120 months. And then we go down here. Larry Max Slick Bryan. All right. He's the one, 52 of Houston. He got 300 months. And this is what I read about him. I read a little bit more about him, and I put his picture up of a younger him. He had been in prison all of his adult life except 5 years. That's insane. That's insane. So from 18 to when he got sentenced here at 52 years old, he'd had 28, 38, 48. That is 34 years of adulthood at the time of that sentencing. And 29 of them he was locked up. That's crazy. And it said that he rose from soldier to a senior general of the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. Now, we're going to talk about a guy here. He was the guy on the bike, okay? Terry Glenn Sillers, 49 years old, a.k.a. Littlewood. His story's fascinating. Terry Littlewood Sillers turned out to be a snitch. Yes, he was a snitch. Quote, you don't see it that much. A gang expert went on to talk about the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas and all that. The gang expert said he obviously cut a heck of a deal. He will be in protection for the rest of his life. Maybe witness protection is involved if he gets out. Who knows what our government does anymore? He probably won't be the only one to turn. I was talking about these guys turning, but Sillers' level of snitching was it was a whole nother level, but it was also because of he had joined in some of the original members. He'd been a member since 1985. He earned his blood tie by attempting to kill and severely injure a rival gang member, according to federal court papers. Sillers slowly and methodically rose through the ranks, and by 1999, he assumed control of a unit within the prison system. In April 2008, he was promoted to the rank of general. A year later, he was the victim of an attempted murder by a rival gang member. The following year, a green light was placed on the Green Light Gang TV. A green light was placed, on the rival gang member who put a hit out on him. He was back on the streets in 2011 and made headlines when he led police on a bizarre chase that was caught by television helicopters. In June 2012, Sillers pled guilty to racketeering charges. According to a government motion filed last August, Sillers, who was in protective custody, check this out, began cooperating with the federal government and is, quote, expected to testify for the government in the trial of other persons not yet charged. Quote, I ratted on the Aryan Brotherhood, said former member Sullivan. They want to chop me up into pieces. They are some bloodthirsty psycho effers. It was either I cooperated or I never see the light of day. I guarantee you 75% of the people in prison, if someone came to them and said, if you give us the information we want, we will make your life better or we will let you leave, they will cooperate. Snitching is the way of the world now. And this Sullivan guy was another guy that this article they were interviewing, they were talking about Sillers like, wow, how does a guy who's been there since 85, rose the ranks, did everything the right way? I mean, you can see how beloved he is, right? So somebody attempts to kill him and then a green light is put on that person. They don't just do that for no reason. Excuse me. Sillers is a general, one of the most brutal Texas gangs, one of the most brutal gangs in this prison and in the streets of Texas. But he had agreed to cooperate with the feds and testify against those who carried out orders under his watch. So the people that he gave orders to, this is where I know like a lot of people hearing this are going to be pissed because it's like, you gave those orders and now you're snitching. Yeah. And it goes on to talk about the Harley chase. And he's on the Harley. All right. And almost exactly 1 year after the chase, Sillers did something in some ways much more dramatic. This time, the action occurred from any television cameras, far from any television cameras. In fact, it occurred in secret. In May 2012, Sillers was charged by official prosecutors with conspiracy to participate. He was given a RICO charge, all right, including murder, attempted murder, and drug trafficking. And on June 28, 2012, he pled guilty in the case as part of a plea deal and agreed to cooperate. Man, that's absolutely insane. And agreed to testify as needed. So, hey, you call me up. Hey, man, we need you in court. All right, I'll be there. After more than a quarter century in the gang, during which time he'd been in and out of prison and risen to the top of the gang ranks, Sillers was out. And at first, nobody knew, okay? But then when this massive indictment came down in November of 2012, then his cooperation became public. And this is, of course, that's after federal prosecutors unsealed and announced a huge RICO indictment against 34 members. So, man, I think about stuff like that, and that's kind of why I wanted to end on it, because you think about somebody like that who's been in since the 80s. You think about all these guys that know him and speak highly of him. I mean, 1985, the ABT was made in the 80s, so he's a member since 85. I mean, he's going to know, I don't know, if there's like, let's say dads and sons involved. Oh, and I will say this really quick. There were women arrested in this. There were women in this case that were getting down with the business. I think it said 4 or 5 women were charged. So, yes, there are women that can be involved and associates of the gang. But, back to Sillers before we're done. You think about that, man, and if there's like father-son duos or brothers, one older, one younger, and they came up with him, and, you talk about how solid he is, and come to find out he's a total rat. But I actually believe with that one quote that we read that said, snitching is the way of the world. And it is. It is. It's like I said, you arrest 34 of those members, I bet you 25 of them are cooperating at least, if not more. But yeah, crazy story. Man, you guys, I want to reiterate again, take care of yourselves. I'm coming up on March 10th, 2025. I'll have 5 years sobriety. And I met a lady yesterday at my job. She celebrated 23 years. She had done 13 years in a women's prison for multiple drug offenses, driving offenses. It's not the way to go. Good for her for making it out. I think about that with myself. But again, you guys, if you're going through it, I don't preach to anybody, whatever your higher power is, take it one day at a time, get the help you need, reach out, pick up that phone. It is a term you hear in recovery. It's like the 10,000-pound phone. And I was like that. I such a hard time reaching out to people. Don't let it stop you. Pick up the phone, call, go to a meeting, NA meeting, AA meeting. Sometimes they say, oh, you don't need them. BS. I think they're good. Pick up that phone list and call, man. Go get a cup of coffee with somebody. Put some time together. If you need to go to 30 days of treatment, go to treatment for 30 days. I missed a Christmas a few years back sitting in detox. You know what? Missed multiple things. Missed Thanksgiving being in jail. It is what it is. There's other Thanksgivings. There's other Christmases. Go get clean. And this time of year, look out for people that you love and care about, especially if they've been through some really rough times, because this time of year, depression sets in because people are celebrating family and friends. Well, addicts, they don't have a lot of family and friends. Addicts are suffering inside and out. Reach out. See what they're doing. Suicide rates go up this time of year. Anyway, guys, much love, much appreciation. Until next time, you already know what it is. Peace.